Hello masipoti sema wethu sinamngele kwisiqendu sethu sale veki senkqubo Yilungelo Lakho, it's your right. My name is Sisanda Jonas. Yithi ke ndinikhumbuze ukuba nani ningavakalise zenu imbono kwincoko yethu yanamhlanje ekuhambeni kwexesha. Our participation line is 0117146918 or 0117146919. You can also email us your thoughts to consumer@sabc.co.za okanye ke usifumane ku Facebook or Twitter. Blinded by the excitement of driving their dream car, many consumers often overlook the implications of vehicle finance deals offered by financial institutions. And it's often at the end of the contract that they realize what the terms such as balloon payment, residual value, or lease agreements mean. And that is why car buyers are advised to consider every aspect of these agreements, including the interest on the loan and the value of the vehicle after or at the end of the contract. Today on YilungeloLakho, we'll take a deeper look at the pros and cons of various vehicle finance options, all with the aim of helping you, the consumer, understand and to be able to make an informed choice before signing on that dotted line. Ukunqokela ke ngokubanzi ngokufanele uqaphele phambi kokutyikitya izivumelwano zokuthenga izithuthi ngetyala. Masamkele indwendwe zethu. We're pleased to welcome Lucius Mudibe, yena omele iofisi ye-Motor Industry Ombudsman. We're also pleased to be joined by Chanel van der Merwe, and she is a car sales executive. Samkele ke Rudolph Mahoney ovela kwa West Bank. Lady, gentlemen, welcome to our program. Let's start off with you, Lucius. Yes. And just maybe look at that. Buying a car, whether it's your first time or not, it is a daunting task. But what is it that people need to consider?
First and foremost, when thinking of buying a vehicle, there are things before you get to finance that you should look at. Okay, affordability in the first place. Are there many dealerships where you can service these vehicles? Are these dealerships convenient to you? Parts availability, the after-sale service. When you get to the dealership, the car that you're willing to buy, first and foremost, you must demand the service history. It's very important. Get to know if this vehicle had accident repairs previously. Spare keys, spare wheel of course is there. Basically, those are things that you should look at.
Rudolph, I see that you're nodding as well. You agree?
Yes, I think the most important part is even before you start looking for a car is to make sure you are able to afford a car. You know, and it's not just affording the car. You need to be able to afford all the elements involved in financing a car and maintaining and running a car, which includes obviously the installment. You need to be able to pay the fuel charges, to insure the car, and then obviously to maintain the car. You know, we do a mobility index, and we found that if you bought a entry-level car, and if you did on average 2,500 kilometers per month, like probably most of us do, then the installment of the car will only make up 38% of your monthly mobility expense. Fuel makes up another 36%, and so on. So you mustn't just budget for the installment of the car, you must budget for all of the elements involved in driving and owning a car.
I mean, at this point, you also need to know how car financing works. What are the different ways one can finance a car?
In general, there's two ways to finance a car. You can typically use an installment sale agreement, which is probably 99% of all the finance that we as Westbank do is on installment sale agreement. It's a basic sale agreement. You pay a car, you have the option to pay a deposit. You finance the car over a period of time. The maximum period is 72 months. You can choose to opt for a balloon payment at the end of the contract period. You may select whether you want a fixed or a linked interest rate. and then basically you will apply for finance. The finance person at the dealership will assist you to complete the application form and guide you through all the steps required and all the documentation that is required for the process. And when you're approved for your finance, then the car will be delivered by the dealership to you.
We'll unpack all of that later on. Chanel, you deal with people at this point as well. We come to you to come in and buy a car. It's well and good to say people must have this information. Do you find that people do come to you well informed about exactly what it is that they need to know before buying a car?
I do find that people do come with an idea of what they'd like. They have an idea of what they would like to pay, sort of what it's going to cost you on a monthly basis. But I do sometimes find that, that it's always a little bit of centre, that they say, okay, well, this is how much I want to spend on a monthly basis. But does your so to speak income, does it provide for it? Obviously, as a salesperson, you've got to sit and you've got to listen to not only what they say they want, but you've got to listen to their needs and you need to address their concerns. Obviously, because of the NCA, a lot of things when it comes to rate and installments and so forth, you need to take to your business manager. But before you go there, you need to have a good idea of what the customer wants and what's practical for them. You can't, somebody that drives 10,000 kilometers a month, which is a ridiculous example, but you can't give them a car with high fuel consumption because their fuel is going to cost more than their installments. So there's a lot of things that need to be discussed and need to be understood with the consumer as well. And they need to be informed, especially first-time buyers. I think they're very excited and they might get a little bit carried away. It's all in the moment. And it's great to have that excitement. Some people lose that excitement.
All right. For now, remember, you can take part in today's discussion by calling us on 011-714-6918 or 011-714-6919. You can also send us an email to consumer@sabc.co.za or catch us on Facebook or Twitter. Don't go away. Welcome back usabukile inkqubo YilungeloLakho, it's your right. Siniphathele yona ke apha kumahamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure ukuthatha inxaxheba kwingxoxo yethu namhlanje. Sitsalela umnxeba ku-011 714-6918 okanye ke ku-011 714-6919. You can also email us your thoughts to consumer@sabc.co.za or catch us on Facebook or Twitter. Chanel, before we went to our break, you talked about informing or advising consumers on which cars are suitable for them. I suppose there are certain things you look at. Just take us through that process and whether people do listen to you.
Yes, well, usually what we do is we take a look at, firstly, what sort of price bracket they're looking in. See what sort of suits their needs, what they say they can afford. Obviously, that the financing part comes later. Also, take a look at, what do they expect to spend on fuel? How far do they drive? There's a number of factors that come into play, as well as what kind of roads they're using, because even a car that has higher fuel consumption, if you're using on the open road, might be actually lower than somebody that's going from robot to robot. So those are a lot of things you need to take into consideration when speaking to a customer. Customers don't always take your advice, but obviously having given it, you just do the best you can. If you give a customer good advice and at the end of the day they benefit from it, that's a customer for life. And obviously that benefits us as salespeople. But it is something, you need to ask all the right questions, you need to ask what they've had before and so on.
I mean, doing research, you come across suggestions that one must shop for a loan. What do you say to that?
Well, you don't necessarily have to shop for a loan, because at the dealership there is a person called the finance and insurance specialist. Now, this person he interacts with all of the financial institutions. So there's been radical technological advances in the motor industry where there's no more filling in papers when applying for finance. You can actually just go to this finance and insurance person after you've discussed the sale of the car itself. And then this person can submit a single application to all of the banks, and then they can give you a quotation on what the banks will charge you on the finance.
All right. Okwangoku ke sinayo Simon yena ophuma ke Eastern Cape. Simon, wamkelekile enkqubeni?
Yebo mama.
Kunjani tata?
Siphilile kunjani kuwe?
Siyaphila Nkosi.
Ngiphilile kunjani kun?
Ngiyaphila tata, uyandiva?
Ewe ndikuva kakuhle.
Alright, thetha kunye nathi ke tata. Tata ndizakucela undincede, Tata, Tata Simon, uyandiva? Tata Simon.
Imoto ngoWest Bank sizibhatala installment. Into abayithethayo xa singakwazi ukubhatala imali le ye-service kuba imoto yanengxaki yokutsha yathi i-insurance ngeke iyibhatale ngoba electrical problems were not covered.
Tata.
Yathinjwa ke imoto ngoku asinamoto kusukela ngo-2011. Imoto yayithengwa ngo-2009, imoto ka-2009.
Kwenzeka ntoni kuyimoto yakho?
Imoto yatsha.
Tata, i-insurance ayavuma ubhatala?
I-insurance ayavuma ukubhatala.
Ngoku ingxaki iphi ngoku?
Ngoku ingxaki yokuba loku imoto seyinonyaka siyikhokha kodwa imile. Saye kukubhatala le mali ye-service.
Tata.
Ya, sangabhatala le mali ye-service yazothinja imoto izothinjela not uba singabhatala installment. Ithinjelwa ukuthi singabhatali imali ye-service.
All right, Tata, enkosi kakhulu. He says he bought a car in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. His car got burnt, but the insurance refused to pay. And now what's happening is that they're paying for this car, but the car is just standing there. They're not using it. But it's confusing a matter right now where he says that the problem is that they're not paying for the service. It's not the installment, but they're not paying for the service, and that's where the problem is.
I think he is confusing the service to monthly installments. Yes. What I can advise him, I've understood him correctly. What should have happened, I think the insurance should have given him an option of getting an independent assessor to establish the cause of fire, what led to the fire, okay? Because the insurance has got their assessors. So I think it is a bit unfair that they did not advise him to get himself an independent assessor, so that when this matter reaches deadlock, then they can refer him to the relevant ombudsman, which is the short-term insurance ombudsman in this case.
All right, ndiyafuna ukunichazela ke kubana inamba ka Simon izawuvela apha kumabonwakude kwenzele nina nikwazi not ka Simon, to apologize for that, ka Lucius, ukwenzele nikwazi xa ninengxaki nikwazi ukufonela ke i-ombudsman office nengxaki eninazo. Enkosi kakhulu for the call from Simon. But continuing with our conversation, car buyers, first-time car buyers, get excited, you know, and it's understandable that you will get excited, you know, this is quite an achievement for some, and but people caution that do not be too excited, that you do not understand your agreements, that you don't understand what the dealer or rather a salesperson is telling you or what is not telling you. The importance of listening and understanding the agreement you are going into.
It's very important to try and just sort of take a breath. I think a lot of people get taken advantage of because of their excitement. It's not always the case, but it does happen. And I think we've encountered a lot of first-time buyers. So as a salesperson, you've got to try and help them calm down, take a look at things from a different view. Stay excited with them, because obviously you don't want to ruin that for them. But you've got to keep in mind that they're excited and try and just help them as best you can. I think first-time buyers, it is an achievement for a lot of people. It's a massive achievement, and I think just taking them through the right steps in the right way and getting them the right advice from a finance point of view is what's really, really important. They must also just keep in mind insurance. Insurance is the one thing that tends to keep a lot of first-time or get them off balance, so to speak. It's not something that they consider, oh, my friend pays so much on a monthly basis, but your friend's been driving a car for a while. Do you know what I'm saying?
All right. Sinayo Andres Khosana yena uphume Benoni. Andres, wamkelekile nkubeni?
Hello, njani sis?
Ngiyaphila tata, kunjani ku?
Ngiyaphila. Mina umbuzo ma uthi mangithatha i-car residual. Then after 2 years, decide ukuthi ngiphinde selo kuzokwenzakalani ngale residual if ever isengakafiki ekuyibhataleni.
All right, Nkosi kakhulu ke tata. Let me direct this one to you, Rudolph. He says he buys a car on residual, and we'll still unpack what a residual is. Yeah. He buys a car on residual, but then he decides to return the car 2 years, within 2 years before the time of the contract has lapsed. What happens to that residual?
Once you've entered into a contract, you enter into a contract for a certain period of time. So normally you cannot just exit the contract and return the car. So you need to pay off a certain balance on your car loan before you are able to return the car. So I need to understand his situation a little bit better, whether he reached the full term of his contract or whether it was short. You know, if you are allowed to change your car during the course of your contract, but then of course you need to settle the outstanding balance that is on your account, and then once the account is cleared, you can buy a new car for yourself.
Lucius, mhlambi i-cases phambi kwenu ngeli xesha, especially kwabantu abathenga imoto, nijonge ntoni?
Okay, I will comment on what the caller has actually complained about. Many times they complain that they did not know of the residual until the end of the term. Now that comes as a surprise to them. So those are things that we actually encounter. Then what I always do is to get all the documentation from the dealership and from the customer so that we can access the terms and condition of that particular sale agreement. Now it is difficult to determine whether the salesperson or the F&I at the time did inform the customer of the residual or not, because even if sometimes they did, but because of the excitement, maybe the customer may have actually forgotten that, oh, I have residual. Because many of us, we visit our contracts only at the end of the term.
You're required to tell consumers all of these details. Is it possible that one does not know that their contract was on a residual?
It should not be possible. They should know from the get-go when you're structuring the deal, even chatting to them before they go through to finance. Once they have done the finance, look, obviously before handover we do signing of contract, and the F&I then again goes through the deal, informs them of the amounts that are on residual, informs them of rates and so on and so forth, and that's, they can't sign the contract without being told that. Right. I do think, like he said, like Lucia said, that sometimes people do, it's 5 years. 5 years is a long time. Most people can't remember what they did 2 weeks ago, and then it becomes a little bit of a surprise. But yes, they are informed. They have to be.
All right. we'll try and we'll unpack what this residual value and balloon payment are about. But for now, let's take another break. Please do stay with us. We will be right back. Sinamkela kwakhona babukeli phambi kokuba ke sihlabele mgama. Khumbula ukuba nawe ungavakalise zakho izimvo kwincoko yethu. Our participation line is 011-714-6918 or 011-714-6919. Okanye ke ungasifumana ke nge-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za. All right, we've already talked about residual, but I need us to unpack what residual value balloon payment is about. Rudolph, help us with this.
You basically have two types of credit agreements. You've got an installment sale agreement and a rental agreement, a rental or a lease. They're very much the same. So basically on an installment sale agreement, you get a balloon payment. A balloon payment is an inflated final installment. Why people use balloon payments is it reduces your monthly repayments, but then you pay a lump sum at the end of the contract. On a balloon payment, the customer is liable for the balloon payment, and once he's made the payment, the ownership of the car transfers to the customer. Okay. Then the second type is the lease agreement or a rental, which serves the same purpose, where it reduces the monthly installments for the customer. It's a inflated final amount, but the customer is not liable for this. The financier holds the risk for the residual value. The catch is that the ownership of the car does not transfer to the customer. So in essence, the financier must then, the customer returns the car to the financier. The financier sells the car, to settle the residual value.
Residual value. But Lucius, tethane customers on a day-to-day basis bayakhala kuba kwezi issues ze residual umuntu ufuneka ebhatela bathi abanye kuba busosichazela bathi abantu abayazi kuba befanele benze lonto leyo. I mean wena umuntu uhlala nabantu ungaba advise into okubana bathathe ezi options esigqibo sichazelwa nguRudolph.
Cha mama. Into ebalulekile ukuthi umuntu ufanele azi ukuthi uma uthatha residual uma i-term izophela uzoba nenkinga because kuleso sikhathi ngeke wazi ukuthi unemali noma awunamali ngaso sikhathi. Ngosinye isikhathi una i-credit engalunganga awubhatala ama-installment wakho ngesikhathi, sometimes awubhatali at all. So i-credit record yakho iyalimala. So at the end of the term uthola ukuthi ufuna ucela i-finance kodwa i-bank iyala ukuthi ngeke sokufinance because now so credit bad. So encourage abantu ukuthi bathathe i-residual. Ucala ufanele uqualify ukuthenga lo moto ufanele uqualify for finance before ungacabanga ngokuthatha i-residual. And angicabanga ukuthi ama-bank nama-dealerships ba-encourage abantu ukuthi bathathe i-residual because thina masifundisa abantu asiba-encourage ukuthi bathathe i-residual.
Masibambe apho kwangoku sinayo Simon from Klerksdorp. Simon wamkelekile enkqubeni? uSimon ukhona? Akekho Simon okwangoku. Let's look at how is this figure or residual value is determined.
The value is determined based on a percentage of the value of the car. So the biggest balloon payment we will finance is, for example, 40%. And then the same applies to a residual value. It is based on the future value of the car. So if you bought the car today and you bought a new car, what will the estimated future value of that car be in 5 years' time, or whatever term the customer chooses to finance the car over, and then that estimated future value will more or less be the size of the balloon or the residual.
Chanel, for a lack of a better word, I don't know if I should say the trend, because you deal with people, but what options do they go for? Do you find that they'll take the residual or something else?
I have found it all depends on affordability. A residual, obviously, or a balloon payment. Let me stand corrected there.
Okay.
A balloon payment helps them with a month-to-month installment. So it brings your month-to-month installment a bit down a bit, and that's why they tend to opt for an installment. You've also found a trend of a lot of people enjoying certain lease offers. That are offered by certain manufacturers, and what's nice there obviously is that where the risk on a balloon is for the customer, the risk then becomes of the title holder, so to speak, of the bank that has financed them. But yeah, usually people go for your installment with a balloon because it does on a monthly basis. It's a bit easier on their pockets.
But considering
Yes.
what will happen in the future, I mean, but Lucius, ngiyafuna ubuza kuwe kwakhona into yokubana abantu bayayi-understand nale balloon payment bayintoni na?
For the fact that abantu bas-approacha ama-complaint afana nalena, kuyabonakala ukuthi abantu abayi-understand. Ngoba it is very, very important. Mafika e-dealership kukhona o-sales person angithi uzobonisa umoto wakho, uzobonisa ukuthi umoto usebenza kanjani, bese uyakuthatha ukuphonsela ku-F&I. U-F&I ufanele achaze kahle ukuthi sikuboleka imali ethize, sikuthola imali ethize ebank and uyaqualifya. Okay, if i-customer yana ibuza ukuthi ngaba ngiyaqualifya for i-residual na, u-F&I uzocheck ukuthi ngaba uyaqualifya no.
So into okwazi uyibuza leyo, but yakwazi uqualifya na for leyo.
Yeah, also person akaningi aba-encourage abantu abacala ukuthi no kune-residual abayi-advertise kaningi. Umuntu uye abuza ukuthi ikhona i-residual noma cha, kodwa-ke abantu aba-understanding ukufana. You know, ne-CPA yacho ukuthi ufanele uchazele lo muntu ngelwimi lakubo ukuthi akwazi uku-understand.
Alright, masibambe apho sinayo Johannes from Norwood. Johannes wamkelekile enkqubeni? Johannes ukhona? Okay, we've lost Johannes, but we do appreciate your call, so do call us because this show is, this program is for you so that you understand these issues. Rudolph, let me come to you. If you wish to retain the vehicle at the end of the original loan contract, can that residual value of balloon payment be refinanced?
Yes, definitely it can be refinanced, and normally we refinance the balloon payment over another 2 years for the customer. What I just wanted to say is before the NCA came into effect in 2007, the maximum period over which banks could finance cars were 54 or 60 months, where the National Credit Act now allows us to finance cars over a longer period. And we the maximum that we do at the moment is 72 months.
Years.
So what has happened since the NCA is that the customers who finance cars over 60 months with the balloon payment have stopped financing with balloon payments, but is now choosing the longer contract period. So with the effect of that is that the number of balloon payments that we have financed has reduced from probably 50% to down to less than 20%. So balloon payments is not that common thing anymore. It's rather longer contract periods, which is much better because once you've paid off the car, you've paid the installments, there's no more worries about a balloon payment. And as a financier, we actually discourage our customers from choosing a balloon payment just because there's so many issues at the end of the contract period. People forget about it and so on. So we actually prefer customers not to finance with balloon payments.
But I have taken this balloon payment. How do I prepare for this now?
Well, you can either save money and pay it cash. That's the one option. The other option is that you can refinance it, and we will gladly refinance the balloon payment for you. However, hardly any of our customers reach the full 72 months of the contract. People usually trade their cars in around about month 36, 30, or between 36 and 40. So when they trade the cars in, then the dealer will then basically settle the outstanding balance, and that also then takes care of the balloon payment. So very little of the customers that we do finance actually reaches the point where they have to now pay in the balloon or refinance the balloon.
Singavuya kakhulu ke basinofumana ke i-calls ezivela kuni ukusibuza ke sithetha ngantoni namhlanje ungancedakala njani na wena namhlanje, and our lines are 0117146918 or 0117146919. For now, let's take another ad break. Please stay with us. Welcome back, Mawethu. Sihlabele ke mgama nencoko yethu. Rudolph, help us to understand issues around interest rates and how these are determined.
Well, car finance it's almost unique where the customer can choose whether he would like a fixed or a linked interest rate at the point where he signs the contract. So basically, a fixed interest rate means your interest rate and your installment gets locked in for the duration of the contract, whereas a linked interest rate means it is linked with a prime rate, and so if interest rate goes up, your installment gets recalculated by the change in prime rate, and then you will have to adjust your monthly payments. Likewise, if interest rate goes down, then you benefit from the decrease in interest rates. Normally what we find, and the advice that we give to our customers, is if interest rates are high, then you should opt for a linked interest rate, because the outlook is that interest rates will come down, and then for you to benefit with that decrease in interest rates as well. And as we have a situation now where interest rates are still very low, even though we've had the 0.5% increase in interest rates, looking at historical levels, they are still very low. And the best way for the consumer to exploit the low interest rates for their benefit is to choose a fixed rate, and then you benefit from the low interest rate cycle.
There's so much information that consumers need to know about this, but what is it that you are able to tell consumers, and what is it that you can't tell them?
As a salesperson, we're not allowed to discuss installments, rates, and so forth. According to the NCA, that needs to be discussed with your business manager or your F&I. As a salesperson, we facilitate in the choosing of the car, we facilitate in finding something that should match within that bracket, but at the end of the day, what you qualify for as a consumer is completely up to your personal profile. This counts for rates, it counts for residuals and balloons, and it also counts for your insurance. Every individual is different, and it's basically from the time that they go from us to finance and insurance, we can only do so much. And then once they come back, we can say, okay, well, let's adjust here or let's adjust there to try and make things fit a little bit more comfortably. But we're not allowed to discuss finance, sort of, all your financials and that kind of thing.
All right, so now David from Kagiso. David, wamkelekile nkubeni? I think we're having problems with our lines this afternoon, but we'll try that again. David, I think we've lost David for now. But Lucius, xa ndibuyela kuwe beske safumana ikhola esichazela into yokubana ababhatala okanye bayabhatala ii-services zabo, but kubakho ingxaki apha abantu xa benengxaki neemoto zabo okanye ii-payments zabo abantu bayeke ukubhatala. Ungaba-advise abantu babenze ngolu hlobo?
Siswam, uma uthenga imoto, uma ubeka i-contract yakho at the back page, bakunike short-term insurance ombudsman's office, telephone numbers, face ombud, banking ombud, motor industry ombud. So those are the offices that you can approach uma nenkinga nemoto. If you're having problems with mechanical side of the vehicle and the vehicle cannot deliver, let's say you bought a Kumbi to deliver school kids and that Kumbi has died, then you can approach the motor industry ombudsman. Asivumi ukuthi abantu bayeke ukubhadala imoto zabo, because at the end of the term uzoba nenkinga yokuthi uthole omunye umoto through finance. If uba ne problem nge-finance ngama interest rates and all those, a banking ombudsman uyakhona ukuthi akakunceda. So you don't have to abandon the contract nama terms and conditions wa contract.
And then masingaphinda na sikwazi ukubuyela ke kulomba we-residual and balloon payment. There's a caller or rather a viewer who wants us to unpack again what you mean by residual value, what you mean by balloon payment. Let's maybe go back to that issue.
Okay. You have the two different types of contracts. You have a installment sale agreement and a lease agreement. On an installment sale agreement, you have a balloon payment at the end. What the balloon payment does, it reduces your monthly installments, but you pay a much bigger amount at the last installment of the contract. Once you've paid this last installment, the car becomes yours. Okay? And on a rental agreement or a lease agreement, you also pay reduced monthly payments. But once that big payment at the end comes up, the customer is not liable to make that payment. But the customer must give the car back to the financier. The financier must then either dispose the car, sell the car, or auction the car to settle
That's
that.
the rental.
But the client is not responsible for that amount. So the agreement is right up front that you are only renting the car up to the end. Then you give the car back, and then the residual value is the worry of the financier.
All right. On installment, once you are done paying, and if you pay that balloon figure, the car is yours.
Yes.
And it's different when you are renting the car. You give the car back.
Yes,
all
exactly.
Right. I do hope that we managed to explain that. But David, David Opumeka. So David, wamkelekile nkubeni?
Hello.
We're not winning today, not at all, not at all. But let's just look at the behavior of people. I mean, what is it that you need to keep in mind? Just on a general point, is it wise to negotiate around month end? Let me talk to you, Chanel.
It is usually wise to negotiate around month end. I suppose it's that last push for dealerships to get those last cars out or get a few bonus units in or whatever the case may be. So yes, it is wise to negotiate then, but at the same time, if you've left it to the last minute, there's only so much room to try and sort of mold a deal that suits your needs. Now, sometimes the case would be, yes, okay, great, we'll do X, Y, and Z, but it's not quite fitting with what you wanted. Whereas if we had a little bit more time to discuss it, we have a little bit more time to change the deal and just conform it to your needs. When it's right at the end, it's, well, this is what we can do. Tomorrow it starts all over again, you know?
Here's another issue. Do be prepared to walk away. Let me point this one to you, Budlicious.
We always advise customers, or rather consumers. When you think of buying a vehicle, you got to calm down. Make sure that the vehicle that you are thinking of buying, is there a need, or do you want because your friend is driving that car? Where do you live? Like, do you live in the urban area, or do you live in the rural areas where there are no tarred roads? What are you buying that vehicle for? Is it going to be for heavy duty, or is it going to just be for light deliveries or for daily use? Those are things that you got to actually ask yourself even before you're approaching the salesperson. Because when you get there, the salesperson would also ask you relevant questions. But as she has just said, at times time doesn't allow you. But we always encourage them to please. The ombudsman is not only there to resolve disputes, but we also do consumer education. We also advise, and we are quite aware that sales people are at work, but these are honest people that would always make sure that you come back again for another deal.
Let me talk to you, Rudolph, in terms of extras in the car. Your advice?
It's a difficult one because it depends on the individual's personal taste and preference, and also what you can afford.
Yes.
So if you are able to afford extras, and these are the luxuries that you want, like Lucia said, you've got wants and needs. If you need to buy a SUV with a canopy or something like that, then that is a need to have. So it's very important to do your research up front, to understand what exactly it is that you are going to do with this car, or this bakkie, or whatever it is that you want to buy, and then what additional things you need to fit to the car in order to fulfill that purpose. I think the same applies not to the physical extras that you fit to the car itself, but also to the extra, the warranties and insurance products that you put on your contract. For example, if you were buying a used car and you're going to do a lot of mileage, it might be wise to have to take out an extended warranty or an extended service plan. So these are the kind of things that you need to understand, and that is where, like Chanel said, you have the finance and insurance specialist at the dealership to have a very thorough conversation with these guys to understand exactly what these products are, what they do for you, and how you can benefit from them, and also how much they're going to cost, and then to make the most informed decision, and to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because these people are there to assist you. And like you said, shopping over a month-end period, if you go to Pick and Pay over a month-end and everybody wants to do their shopping at 12 o'clock, you're not going to get good service from the checkout people. So it might not be a wise thing to always go at month-end, because everybody's busy at this time.
Let's now take our final ad break. Please, ungayindawo mbukeli siyabuya. We're still looking at the pros and cons of various vehicle finance options to help you, the consumer, understand and be able to make an informed choice before signing any deal. Facebook messages ezivela kunisinayo George Bongani wakaMathonsi uthi yena car finance dealers in our country is the biggest deal, because we buy cars without more knowledge or know the terms and conditions of the car. We suffer in the end. That's George Mathonsi from Deep Kloof Zone 4. To people beware, don't find yourselves trapped by car dealers. And that's Nombuyiselo Zulu wase Ulundi. Last year I bought my first car. I got a finance through dealership. The problem was one of the banks financed me with 35,000 rand, but the dealer signed for 28,000 rand. When I asked them about the 7,000 rand shortfall, they told me that it goes to the guys, or the guys who have done the paperwork, and they don't tell me about it. Is it legal to take this much money just for paperwork? Let me read the last one, and then we'll try and answer Gugu's question. Good afternoon. I was trying to phone you, but your phones are forever busy. We do apologize for that. And I wanted to ask, what type of cars consume less fuel, and do you advise first-time buyers to buy second-hand cars or new cars? Let's start with Gugu's question, Lucius.
That one of a second-hand car.
Not the second-hand car, the one who was signed for a 35 rand, I think, deal, and then there was a 7,000 rand shortfall there.
Okay, in the first place, when you buy a vehicle, there is a document called offer to purchase. Offer to purchase is a document that has the description of the goods, the price of the goods, and also the total amount that you and the dealer has agreed upon. And then if you buy cash, obviously you will pay cash. If the dealer will finance, if they have in-house finance, it's still okay. But if the FNI is still going to get finance for you, they should also disclose to you, this is so much it is going to cost you. But in that case, I think something went wrong. I see lack of disclosure, because they're telling him about some guy that does paperwork for them. That in itself is not right. And we encourage people like him or her to contact the motor industry ombudsman and lay a complaint. We will investigate the complaint. If his or her complaint is out of our jurisdiction, we will refer him or her to the relevant ombudsman or to the National Consumer Commission.
That was uGugu. I hope ufumene ke impendulo yakho, ungakwazi nofumana ke inombolo ke zika Lucius, ukwazi ke ufonela ke kwi Motor Industry Ombudsman Office uzofumana uncedo khona. Umbuzo landelayo, Rudolph, I wanted you to tackle that one where the viewer wanted to find out whether should they buy a new car, a used car as a first-time buyer.
As a first-time buyer, I would always suggest that you keep it as simple as possible, okay? Understand what it is that you're going to need the car for, and understand how much it is that you can afford. We've got calculators on our website where you can actually put in all of your incomes and expenditures, and you can calculate what your monthly installment will be, and then you can decide based on that how much you can afford. Then, based on that, then you can decide if you want to buy a new or a used car. There's really not much difference between a brand new car and a car that's 1 year old. So that shouldn't be the determining factor whether you buy a new or a used car. So it's really personal preference, what you can afford and what you're gonna use the car for.
Chanel, you want to add on that?
Yes, I think obviously when it comes to being a first-time buyer, again, it's a very exciting process. If you are, let's say your budget only allows for a used car, that is fine. Just make sure you go to somebody that is reputable. Do certain things like check the service history. Just make sure that there's no respray on the car and so forth. Or if there is, that it's been recorded and that everything has been checked on the car. Obviously a new car is always a little bit easier because you're starting off with the car. So every little thing, everything that's happened to that car, you've now done. But it's not always within people's grasp to be able to do that. And as long as you go to a reputable used car place, it's, you should be in safe hands.
Lucius, I mean, kumnandi uthetha ngolhlobo kodwa ndiyafuna ukwazi bana ngokubona kwakho le information sithetha ngayo namhlanje, advising, giving tips and all of this, is this information that's readily available to consumers?
It is readily available. We know that not every of us has access to website or internet. You can always phone the Motor Industry Ombudsman. You can phone Automobile Association of South Africa. The National Consumer Commission is giving out booklets free of charge. This information is really available. You just have to take your time, phone us before you go to the dealership to look at what you need to buy, and then we'll give you an advice.
Is this an advice that Westbank will give as well? I mean, you told us that on your website there's a calculator there where one can search and check whether they can afford a car or not. Do people know about this? Do they make use of it?
Yes, they definitely do know about it, and actually the calculators on our website is the most frequently visited place on our website. So people make extensive use of that to try and calculate, how much they can afford and all the other associated costs.
I mean, just to wrap up everything that we've said today, your advice, your tips, and what consumers need to remember.
Look, I've seen the guy that actually was also inquiring about vehicles that are low on fuel consumption or high on fuel consumption. It is difficult to actually give him an advice because fuel consumption at times depends on the driving style. It sometimes depend on the area where you travel. You know, it depends. Some guys put, you know, tires that are out of spec on their vehicle, and that has effect on the fuel consumption. So it is very, very important to understand your needs and wants. If you're traveling between Pretoria and Johannesburg on daily basis, if you stay in Pretoria and work in Johannesburg, then you know for sure you don't need a V8 engine vehicle. You don't need it. You need
All right, Chanel?
I think my advice would be just do your homework properly, but also make use of the facilities in your area. So, for example, if you want to go get a car, go to your closest dealership, obviously of which you want to do, ask for advice, and you can always go and sit with the F&I and say, look, this is kind of what I'm looking to do. Let's see what rate I qualify for and what will fit within my budget. And then you can go back to the salesperson and make use of what you've got, the advice that you've got, and the experts that are in your area.
All right, Rudolph, very briefly, your closing remarks.
Do lots of research even before you go to the dealership to look at the car. Understand what it is that you want to buy, what it is you're going to use the car for. You can go onto the websites of the banks to calculate the installments. And if you do all of that, then you will take that emotional decision out of when you get to the dealership. Then you have a much better idea of what it is you want, what it is you need, and then you'll make an informed decision.
Thank you very much. We have come to the end of today's show, and I'd like to thank our studio guests for their times. Please join us again next Friday for another live consumer topic of the week. Please join us every Monday morning from 9:30 to 10:30. From me, Sasanda Jonas, and the entire team, it's goodbye. YilungeloLakho,